morning, class. Welcome to Homeroom with Unc and Market Monk. Morning, P. How was your week?
Good. So there was some smalls I've been sitting in for a while that made a pretty big move this week. So a lot of selling for me out of that account, and then yeah, I mean just stocks responding to my plans and levels pretty well. Kind of sticking to the same ones in the options trades. MSTR post split has been really good. That one has always been readable for me, but when the in the money contracts are 4 grand, I mean it's kind of like that's not, you can't really touch that till late in the week. So so that's pretty much tradable every day. AVGO, same deal, and then LLY has been real responsive for me. So uh, the rally pushed further faster than I expected, but I mean to me it's about not just what a bunch of random stocks I'm not looking at are doing. It's what are we following? How did it do? The hot list performed very well. A lot of last five stocks made their move too. So just sticking to the process as far as that goes.
Nice, nice. Yeah, pretty good weekend. It's just been one of those markets where, especially as a swing trader, where you're even if you don't get all the way in, you're in a position, and it definitely makes more than a move than you anticipated in a shorter period of time. Seen that this week with Starbucks. Illumin's still kind of on that train for me. A little bit of Rocket Lab as well. So just stocks that when these smalls make 50-60% moves in a week or two, or on the news event, you just kind of got to get rid of them, and or at least manage the position a little bit. So a lot of that this week for me, and then I'm with you on the hot list buys. I don't know how to relay that to our people, but especially for the swing traders. But usually you buy something, and by the end of the week you're okay, and the next few weeks the ones make the move. Some stay flat, some go off, but crypto's a great example, and that's what it was last week. Just a good week to buy those positions. So felt really good about entering, especially with the market kind of bouncing back. With you a little more. I said last week, um, we're either going to stay inside this drop candle for a while and consolidate, or we're going to fill the gap back to the top. And I'm with you. I didn't think it'd be in one week that would happen. So interested in our conversation this week on that part.
And I think, and I was talking about this yesterday, that I think in a rally like that, um, you want to be mindful of the stocks that are maybe out ahead of their skis a bit. And there's a lot of software like that where it caught this rally. It fell way too far on that Bank of Japan news. I mean, I think like Snow was under 110 briefly or something like that. But for them to just come back, right where they were, makes some sense. The ones that kind of push way beyond that. I was actually in RH and popped 5%, and I went ahead and got out because it's just likely going to give some of that back. So the kind of the pop and fade kind of thing. And I think the reason people say you can't swing in this market is because they enter swings basically at like now and in high beta tech stuff, and it's like it already sort of found equilibrium, and you're pretty much 50-50 at best, and some of them have earnings catalysts that probably are going to take them down, and and all that. So, but they weren't loading the search the group smalls that we talked about. So I still had some ASTS just hanging out in it. INQ hasn't really made its move yet, but I'm just building there so that when it does, you're selling as people are now starting to talk about it. I never saw so many Rocket Lab posts in my life till this week,
Yeah,
and
I've never heard of that
we've been
stock.
on that.
That's a new one.
Right? Yeah, yeah. And so we've been on that a long time. So I think part of it is just not really knowing how swings work. I mean, they basically they see confirmation. Okay, the market's not going to crash, so now I'm gonna start buying, and you can get caught in some pretty nasty pullbacks, even just intraday on that. And options that'll just completely shake you out. Um, so yeah, I mean, you want to swing like there's a way to do it. I think we teach it pretty well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you get some good sector coverage too, I didn't have any of the ASTS this round. I got rid of that. It's tough for me the stuff that we start $3 or $4 to buy up there in the 20s. Just mentally, it's a little tough for me
Yeah, yeah.
to do, and I'm sure those moves are become better in the options at some point in time. Um, it's not like I'm going to put 20 grand in a play like that. But if you just go back, I mean, even with coffee too, it's the same thing. I probably should start the spy screen. If you search the group, I mean, we were on the sector when it was the time to buy that when it was boring, and both of them, and you got to get good coverage. And I mean, I'll expand on the space sector just because no, I mean, to me, it's what really stands out. It's like when people are screaming about Rocket Lab and ASTS. Well, freshmen are like, or sophomores are like, yeah, well, you missed the good entry, and but up here at graduate school, I'm like, man, you missed fucking PL, you missed RDW, you're about to miss space when it goes off. Like, you missed a lot more than just that. And your entry sucks. So,
Right.
and your entry was really shitty on all of those. So yeah, I mean, that's just the mark. That's the more comfortable way to swing, to be honest with you, is being able to. I mean, Baba's another good example, man. I mean, it was spied at 72 and just hold on for a little while, and it kept going from 72 to 76. But when the news turns around on those plays, they pop really well, and you just have it's not the beach ball effect. I mean, I don't really see it that way, but you definitely have a release of no one's going to sell right now, and there's way more interest or buyers or activity than normal. And in that case, supply and demand kick in, and price just goes up.
Get into some. I mean, a lot of these smalls, some of these gaps they get into from just their really precipitous decline that they had, that they can move quickly through the zone,
Yep.
and that's what Roku's done that twice since I've been trading it, and just, I have this huge gap between these pivots, just because there just isn't a lot of option activity there. Because why buy that lower strike? You just buy the higher one because they know it's going to go there, and it just flies right through the zone. And the coffee thing, we're having the debate, bros, Starbucks, West, et cetera, which is better, all that, and bros took a dip on earnings, but as far as it fell, it still was above my share entry, and I had options both ways, between it, and now it's building, moving back up. Starbucks reminded me a little of some of our Disney trades where it's just like it's just not going to hang around down here forever. And when you enter stuff like that, you don't know. Okay, it's going to have the biggest gain in its history because they're going to hire the Chipotle CEO.
Mm-mm.
You don't know anything about that. But it's sort of
Nope.
like X. The
You
guy
don't.
told me, "Oh, you don't know. How could you have known, that Nippon Steel is going to buy him?" Like, I didn't know that.
You
I
don't.
just
But
knew that there are options out of the money in set up in such a way that it looks like front loading to me.
no,
So
I know, I don't know that's coming, right? But I know that ain't what I'm buying, and I know you're
yeah,
thinking about buying then. So that's how we're fucking different. That's what I would
yeah,
tell that guy. Cause you ain't thinking
right,
about buying then. I have already bought. I'm
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about selling. So if you want to talk about what we're thinking about, I'm thinking about where to sell when that shit comes in because I already bought, not
yeah,
whether I should chase it or not. And that's the difference. I mean, that's it. Point
yeah,
blank. That's the
exactly.
difference. And then the flow to me is just a weapon. Like it. All right. There's
Yeah,
activity to the north. Like it's the someone knows. It's just the someone knows. And Starbucks probably not a good example of a someone knows. But an ASTS is a good example of
Yeah.
someone knows, and you just the way you can see it in general in the flow most of the times. So the smaller it gets or the mid size, they can't hide from what you do, and you see that time and time again. And I caught your post on ASTS. Like that's not going to stop at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, oh, holy shit, $10 move throughout the day. I mean, it's just part of that process that you can't hide. The flow can't hide, or the money can't hide from the flow. But you got to still buy on the good TA spots. That's the other part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly. I mean, our matchup. I posted about Tesla recently in collabs, and um, we're well above uh, your pivot, so that there is some level of like, okay, here's confirmation. We get some follow through,
Mm-hmm.
but it sure feels a hell of a lot better to see Tesla 280C 300C when your average is under 200,
Yes,
or
sir.
where your average is under 190, and then you're like, okay, because if it does fail, Elon, has to dump a bunch of shares because Twitter ad revenue's down, or some shit like that. And we retest your level again. I mean, well, you're already in it, and you can have a spot where like, okay, I'm going to sell here, sell some here, reload at this spot, whatever. So you can have a long term idea of Tesla going 300 plus, but not have an average of 260, and sit through all these drops to the 180s, and be out of cash to buy the dip, and the whole narrative of Twitter like that. Some guy, a big account was like that with Coin. He had an average in the 80s or something, dip way the hell below that, and then he's doing victory laps when it goes the other way. Um, and I'm just sitting here like, well, what were you doing those 3 or 4 months when it was 40 some bucks? Um, so, not getting in situations like that, big part of what we do as well.
No, you should always have a plan on the man. I mean, Tesla's a good example because it does have the range and is a bit of a larger stock. But if Tesla gets to 220, you probably shouldn't let it go below 200 again. I mean, you can just buy it again. You can just
Yeah,
redo the trade, or at least take some of it off the table, and then your average, like you said, if you get below 190, let's just call it 185, and you sell some, and now your average is 170, it's gonna feel a lot better. It's gonna be easier to buy more too, and it's a trade within a trade. Um, I think a lot of people miss that part from the share side. It's just to plant the flag. I'm gonna put X amount of money, 1,000, 5K, $500, whatever it is, and I'm gonna buy it on this day and just see what happens. And that's just not the way to do it, especially with the large caps. That's not the way to do it, or any big name, because you kind of have more play in those names. To be honest with you, most of those entries are coming back. Whereas a small cap, if you're playing a news on a small cap, that might not come back ever again. Like if you chase
well, I I
Soundhound even at 7, you're in a bad spot. That's a good example.
oh, for sure. And the yeah, the conversation that happens sometimes, I think it comes from an experience, or or something. But like, I actually will think I'm talking to someone about options, and they're talking about shares, but the way they're looking at it needs some recalibration. So Starbucks pops up 5% on earnings or whatever, and then it drops back and it's up 3.5%, and it's like, God damn, man, it should have sold. And I'm thinking like, yeah, for an option, what is that, a weekly, or what is that? No, I mean it's shares. Um, you're talking about 1.5% on a stock the size of Starbucks. 1.5% is a good day for it, but when you bought this, what were you trying to do with it? And so to me, that was like, we were at an entry. This is definitely like a longer term hold. I mean, you see some green, you take some off the table. I get that, but at the same time, SMCI, same kind of deal. Like, options, you got to get the hell out. If you're trying to build something over time, um, 1% moves are not really what you're after, and you maybe want to look at small caps if you're trying to day trade. Uh, I can't really imagine, like, I wouldn't day trade LLY shares. Um, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So if I want shares in that, I have some pivots. They're long gone, but the I guess just what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And understanding how a stock moves. John Deere. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. I mean, so John Deere. I mean, I think people see stuff in the notes sometimes, and it's like I don't want to really risk it. I'm just going to buy a share. Um, those don't move in the way that you would need them to day trade share. Nothing wrong with owning John Deere shares, you know, down here, but I don't think trading large caps for 1% moves or 2% moves is really um, what you should be after. And um, so I guess just market cap sector, kind of start there and try to pick up on the work that we're doing, and then build from those spots.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't try to day trade those. I mean, unless there was like a huge news event, you could probably get away with it. Um,
Yeah, Ulta. Warren Buffett buys Ulta, tops 14%, pulls back to 9%, catch the retrace back up. Um, yeah, I mean stuff like that certainly
yeah,
would work.
but you're way better in the smalls, just on the range itself.
Yeah,
And then I'm with you. Like, start with the sector. Definitely want to just find stuff in an uptrend and kind of follow that trend and hopefully get some news throughout the day or early in the morning. The early in the morning news is really good way to follow if you're looking for somewhere for activity throughout the day. So um,
yeah.
the
And we're about to get back into a moment too with the oil, where there's something psychologically about traders with oil that is always sort of strange to me, that there's this never ending optimism about and excitement about stocks, even as they pull back, buy the dip, buy the dip. Like somebody, Intel or AMD, not performing well. Well, it's I'm going to turn around, buy the dip, buy the dip. But with oil, so many times, I mean, even within the room, Oxy goes below a pivot, and it's like, is it done? Everyone's like looking for oil to do this massive um, collapse, and I just don't really think that the world is built that way for oil to for Oxy to fall to $40 or something like that. Then and it's a little bit ironic to me because the setups within oil have been so reliable ever since we've been working together. At And it can show strength even as spies pulling back, or whether spies going up, or like all of that. There's so many good spots to load some of these stocks, and so I don't know what goes on psychologically with oil in particular. Metals get that way too, but like, is the move done? Are these stocks done? Uh, it seems more common with those sectors, and I'm not sure. I'm not really sure why.
Yeah, you just gotta be patient with them. So a lot of people avoid them. But if you're
Yeah.
looking for a place to park money, some of those levels are pretty undefeated, and some have the range too. I mean, I don't like your bigger ones, but those mid-sized ones are really good on the range too. So um, I think that is probably the commodity to buy over the summer currently, as opposed to some of the other stuff. I've been really wanting to get back into gold and silver, and um, the price. It's just a different setup, right? Where the commodities at the all-time high versus the commodities probably a little undervalued, and geopolitically, the other one has a lot more upside if the wrong things happen overnight. Um, just to keep the oil, I guess, the better setup. But some of those gold and silver charts look spicy at the current moment. So for me,
Hey,
it's
you want to
just
talk about like uncomfortable?
it's following the flow though lead. I've learned that through the time. You just kind of got to follow the flow on that one because it's usually ahead. And I think what do we see that with I don't want to say the name, but you got some hundreds on a $10 stock like last week, and you kind of see stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah. For me, it's just kind of be patient in those sectors. But I'm with you. The oil is probably the best from a TA standpoint currently. Um, yeah,
With silver too, I wanted to get back into silver, and
they really do.
I just did the uncomfortable buy um, on AG disaster earnings. I've talked a long time about the management is pretty bad at that company, so you want them when they're out of the news, not when they're in the news. But that dropped in the 460s, 555 now. Just simple relief, mid candle, no big deal. Can make that move to 6 to 8 now. But I'd rather have an average that starts with 4 if I want to try to pursue that. So so that that sector you got to kind of pick and choose, find the ignored ones, the oversold ones, and the best ones usually are the mucks of the world, where there's just
Yeah.
no flow, and then there's a lot of it, and I try to clue us in on that.
Oh, what about the other kind of gas, that natural gas we got there? Just slide over there.
Yeah. So they, you didn't want it to linger under $2 for very long, and it didn't. So um, bounced from there, 212 or so, and really the flow is positioned on this for natural gas to trade between anywhere from like $6 to $9 or $10. And I just look at the ETF flow and all that, and it can just be kind of a little bit of a bumpy road to get there. Easiest way to weather that is shares. The the leverage ETFs. I think you can get a piece of those. You don't really want all your whole basket in there though, and I think a lot of the combo stocks is still it's still where to look. They're they kind of are where they are. I mean, if natural gas dips back to $2, I don't think you're going to see CRK just have a disastrous week or anything like that. It's just going to drop back to some familiar areas, consolidate a bit, and everything. Boyle's the one that can give you the 6-7% down days, so you got to be ready for that. But yeah, I don't know what exactly the catalyst is going to be, but I guess removing whatever's holding the prices down. Um, I mean, I don't use manipulation a lot, but natural gas seems very heavily manipulated just in response to geopolitics. So this is going to take off pretty fast and not stop whenever it does happen. When I can't say because they just buy the maximum length of time on any of these given contracts. If it's January 2026, they're buying that. If it's December 2026, they're buying that. So definitely, I think you just scale in DCA, and I think you'll do pretty well in natural gas.
Yeah, especially the ones with the extra thesis, which we cover well in the room. I agree with that.
Yeah.
A little
Well,
comp.
I will say too, just across the board in commodities. I mean, February is a big spot for uranium. It's a big spot for gold. It's a big spot for silver. I can't tell you why, but I can say that when the flow is set up like that, I think if you trade with that timeline in mind and you trade in a way that's cognizant of the levels we talk about, you're usually going to do pretty well.
Yeah, so I assume the election picking a side is what the pivot will be because we usually get it's a 4 year um, 4 year bucket of hope. You usually get dumped on you there. So I'm assuming that's a big part of that February strike, just off the top of my head. Um, what
I
copper
think so.
action? Go ahead.
And
Go ahead.
I would say that the big politically the big story for me, and it started with weed, I think, is neither party's wanting to step out and be. They want to reposition themselves instead of Republicans being anti-weed. They want to be more receptive to it
Hmm.
instead of Republicans being anti-solar. They're not quite as aggressive um, about that. Oil Democrats, uranium, everybody. Uranium's green now. Uh, you know, coal. I think the right still definitely is perceived as being much better for coal. But the way that the the political political world tries to reposition itself around these issues is significant, and crypto is the biggest example of it. And that story is in that trade is just getting started. Um,
Well, we're
and
almost to a point on the political aspect. I mean, especially in this cycle, where one side is like business as usual, and the other side is like new ideas. And why is that important? Is because the business as usual, we kind of know what to expect, and the new ideas we've never been through before, and just even like on inflation. One side saying we're just going to drill for oil and that's going to solve all our problems, and I mean that's definitely some old school. That's some old school. That's some '70s stuff. That's not like a new age stuff. It's old and dumbed down. And the other side's like, we're going to go after corporations to hold them accountable, and that's definitely a new battlefield to fight. So just even the outcome that coin flipped is kind of left and right, for lack of better terms. But the market predicting one side is pretty easy, and it feels like the other side will be a crapshoot, just in general.
I posted about this with crypto. I was like so glad to see all the sort of the FUD about the U.S. government's loading crypto into this wallet, and they're gonna dump it on the market. And I'm like, oh, excellent. So we get this 3%, 4% drop in Bitcoin in an hour, and here's some fresh range, and stocks like MSTR. Okay, it's gonna pull back under 130. That's where you want it. Shot back up 6 points Friday, from that area. So kind of in the short term, that I've, that's what we really want to see. Being a cheerleader for my long-term portfolio based on who wins an election is not what I'm about.
Yeah, no.
Um, you know, we, we're about the market sentiment reaction to given legislation or comments or government actions or whatever. So definitely, there's just going to be so much ground to cover and great setups in response to all that. They did ask about copper, which I wanted to get to before we get to SPY. Um, yeah, copper pretty much passed the test on the dip under 4. I was like, yeah, you don't want to set the same low at 380 or so. You want kind of a higher low. If 4 is the higher low, we're set up pretty well. Said that I think 2 weeks ago, and we're at 414, recovered nicely. Um, FCX and others are setting up in kind of like swing setups and options. So FCX, not to get too much into individual names, but it's kind of the biggest barometer for um, copper stocks, and 46, 48, 50. Those strikes showing back up. Um, that's a really positive sign. So there's a lot of beaten down aluminum that you can look to,
Yes.
steel as well, and yeah, I definitely think you start to load swings in those when no one notices or cares about them, not when FCX is $52 again. So same old story for us.
Yeah, it's kind of the one of the drop balls of the infrastructure trades not really taking off in this administration after we're building back better or whatever it was. Um,
Yeah.
it seemed to the long term outlet on that kind of feels like the cart before the horse with interest rates. Like I think we have to get interest rates back before industrial um, really will take off. But again, like they're at great levels currently. A lot of that stuff is at great levels, or I mean, it might be a high or low even from a November or an April pullback, but you're still at a pretty good level for a long term position in those.
Yeah.
You got to kind of figure that out about yourself, not to get too off topic, but whether you're a short term trader or you can hang out a little bit. And I mean, we have a couple great examples in our room of people that don't hold over a day. A day is a long trade for them, and then we have people that you know they're holding stuff for a month, easy, easy. That's just the start of it. They might buy more after a month, and you just got to figure that out about yourself because some stocks are going to be super tradable, and some you shouldn't even be messing with. Um, and commodities, I think, show what they are um, up front. Like you kind of do need a longer scale, like you're saying with AG, to kind of dab because you can't really predict that. And when the wave does come, it's kind of a freight train you're just going to want to be on. So um, again, I like the stuff with the theses built into them. So those names that we've been on for quite some time, your Warrens and your Jerry Jones, those are probably the best place to really learn if you're going to even be in that sector. So um, touch a little bit on crypto, P.
And
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and just something I was going to say too as well. With the commodities infrastructure, I mentioned home builders,
Yeah.
the other day, and so a lot while people are saying, "Oh, look, Nvidia is right back where it was," I'm gonna hop back in here. I'm not going to say you missed Nvidia. You kind of did if you didn't buy it
A
on
little
that
bit.
last drop.
A little bit.
Uh, yeah, you're, but so instead, um, the like home builders and then solar popping up for me right at the same time, and I said, conditions are going to improve in the stock before material conditions improve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is all, it's all about that forward looking, that reset of rate cut, optimism. So people, when we start talking like that, it's worth noticing. And for whatever reason, you can throw a stock like Lemonade in there too. Um, it ends up being a pretty rate sensitive stock. And then all of a sudden, Roku's looking bullish. That tends to be in that environment, as well. So there's that trade um, setting up instead of oh, I missed Nvidia at 100, so I'm going to buy it at 130 this week because it might go to 135. That's a much tougher way to trade than what we do. Okay, so crypto, uh, yeah, I mean the 60K coming back, staying relevant. Um, that definitely has a lot of significance, and to set up for another leg up. The I think you're still kind of in the mode that you wait for them to have a really bad morning, and it's usually not even really like a really bad, full day, but the ones that set up and pull back to a spot that you're after. The crypto miners, I talked about dilution. I think I mentioned it in Riot, and then 2 days later, Mara, dropped an offering. That kind of stuff can really get you. So my main thing in crypto is like if it's not coin or MSTR, do not buy an option in it
Oh yeah.
because I
No.
just don't think you really want to try to time the move. But the move is to me setting up for nine. I don't think 100, but I think 88 to 92,000. I think that will probably happen with Bitcoin. So position accordingly.
So I don't know, but your to buy your entry to buy was last week just for the run to 65. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're late, find the one that has some, disaster pre-market, and you can start to move in there.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah, I mean, I'm
I
with
was
you.
I would suggest if you're late, I mean, this is where we defer a little bit because I don't. You do MSTR, although that one's coming. That one could be in a month. I'm trading that one. We'll see how that works out. But that or coin.
Yeah,
I want the BITFs and the ciphers and the hives and the huts down there, and you just kind of find something that's still around a TA level that hasn't or below a TA level. That'd be preferred. You can get something below a TA level right now. I just buy that, and that's what you're gonna have to settle on buying currently. Especially if we wake up in Bitcoin
I'll buy.
62K.
Um, I wanted coin under 180, and that was what I got, and so I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
It went
yeah,
further under 180 than I thought it would, but bought a little more. And I said at the time, I'm like, look, I mean, the next spot down is 120. I don't really think that we could do
we're
that.
not doing that.
And it did. So that's why, like, I mean, for me, averaging down, it has to have something like that. It's like, yes, there's a pivot below. It's a different sort of world if that pivot happens. So I don't think we're going to do it. So was okay with adding more. Um, yeah, MSTR. I mean, you got about 30 points of downside potentially, and you just, if you want to enter it, you plan for that. So it means your position is going to start smaller.
Yeah,
But if you were to get an average of 115 or 118 after some big drop like that, you'll be fine because that's probably going to be a $200 stock once crypto takes that next leg up.
yeah, definitely easier to trade on the share side. All right, let's get in the SPY, sir. So we're not here all day today. We got from
Yep.
last week. I think we had okay on the floor. What's this candle? 30. So we had a little bit, maybe a couple dollars lower on the downside, but it went $10 above our top side, which was pretty much if you go to smaller time frames. It was just Thursday and Friday. We were kind of went up to that 145 level, and then a big pop Thursday, Friday. Um, Not expected from me to get that much of that back that soon. To be honest with you.
Uh, yeah, a lot of stuff overshot my targets. Like AVGO, I was looking for 160, 161, went to 165 or 166, something like that. So the way that matches up with SPY, I mean, um, that's what happened there. And yeah, I mean, on my end, so the 1220 500p has flipped to the bid. Um, they When I started talking about that contract, it was about $300. It topped out about 1600, and now it's 523. So that contract could set back up for another pullback. And again, I think the pullback is not to 500, but maybe 520 and the 530s again. That certainly could happen. I don't really see that so much in SPY. Uh, QQQ definitely has a little pullback baked into it. So I just sort of be mindful of that as we start the week. Not a lot of big earnings movers this week. It's a big week for software
Retail.
and retail. So I mean that could kind of shift sentiment a bit, but yeah, I'd just be careful. I'd be careful up here. Seems like we might need to let off some steam. Jackson Hole coming up is usually a
Yeah.
sell excuse too.
That was my number one topic. A1 horse in the push for either direction was
Yeah.
the Fed. Do the Feds come out and really reference that we could get cuts soon, as in September, and that it could be a decent size cut out the gate. For me, I mean that's the story. That's where we are for the short term. If we're looking at a 6 8 week market outlook, it's when does everybody start moving for the door, and the door is interest rate cuts. Like, when does that happen? When does that rotation happen, and we really get, because I think the first one's going to be super bullish for the market. I really really do. The only problem with that is first time in history that I can think of, or at least recent history, where you're going to have a rate cut 2 months before an election. So I expect a lot of volatility in that regard, but kind of looks like some people said go this week, P. They already said let's go. Um, I mean, that's kind of how I took Thursday and Friday, how I digested it. Like people aren't really gonna wait a month to get into positions. They're gonna add now, and we've seen it a million times before. The good names always go first. Um, yeah, so that's just kind of how I see it. So I'm more of a I don't think we break out to new highs this week, but I don't think we pull back much.
You, I think. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with 544.49 as my low, and 558.84 high.
I like it. I like it. I really want to go with this. I mean, it's just where we opened Thursday. This 542, 32 right in here. It's pretty much where we opened Thursday, so it's not a huge level down, and gonna have to have some range this week. So I'll take that chunk back just to keep an active range, and then I think that 60 strike is definitely a problem. Um, so I'm gonna go right at it, the 50, 59.99, and then the 440, 442.32 on the bottom. So I think I'm a little higher and a little low. I just got more range than you this week, P.
And we might wick into it. I mean that's kind of how sometimes it happens, where you know my lower level might be that's where the
Open.
body of the candle stops,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we, yeah, and then we get into some attempts. If we get a hard fast rejection at 60, that sends it right back, to the middle of that previous candle probably. But yeah, so I'm with you on that regard.
We've had a couple sell offs since we've been doing this, and I mean the worst one was that crescendo, but I mean that was a year and a half ago, I believe.
Yeah,
But I mean, anytime we've had this hard sell off, I mean, two things I've noticed right away recently is it's not more than a couple days. It's not a couple weeks. We haven't really had that. And the recovery is usually pretty swift. And then you're kind of stuck in no man's land if you sat on your hands, right? Because you're like, well, we just had a pullback, and now I'm back to where I was a month ago. What do I do? And instead of having a plan throughout it, so it doesn't sound like you have a ton of downside again. So just be mindful of that, especially if the bigger numbers come in towards the end of the
the
year.
again, I there's some big contracts that have to wake up, and then even what I said about that 500p December, I was like, you got to have the kind of the 1-2 punch, and there wasn't something in October, in if October 520 had already been a big deal on that move to 520, you could have had the selling could have regrouped and held us down or pushed us lower. But no, I didn't really have that. And that Monday after that drop, that was probably the most aggressive I've been in notes, where it was just like
Yeah, no, I noticed that.
buy, buy this, buy that, and just they instantly took off, and then you're just deciding what to sell, what to roll, you know, all that, and then you just go from there. So yeah, for me, the no man's land thing, easy to get that way in options, and you have to, number one, you have to buy into strength, and you have to stick to what you know, and that's why I've been trading LLY so much over the past week.
Yeah, no, in retrospect, your big list Monday, your big list on the weekend session last week. I mean, in retrospect, it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
you
the
said it at the time too. You're like, you had a good report card, and I had 30 something stocks. So
yeah, exactly, exactly.
do the math. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. That's the you want some indicators. No, those are the ones you should be using. All right, Pete, you ready to get to work?
Yeah.
All right, like and subscribe somewhere.
Yeah. Let's do it.